Imagine waiting for 11 years for the love of your life to return home. Years spent with only memories to hold on to, a longing for the day when you would finally be reunited. You think you know them, trust them, and welcome them back with open arms, believing that the past is behind you. But what if the person you thought you knew had been hiding something from you, something so dark, so destructive, that it would change everything you thought you understood about love, trust, and betrayal? After 11 years behind bars, John returned home to Jane, and for a brief moment, it seemed like nothing had changed. The love, the connection, the dreams of the future, everything felt like it was falling into place. But just days after their reunion, the joy they had hoped for turned into something unimaginable. Jane learned that her husband had brought back more than just his freedom. He had brought with him a secret, one that would haunt their lives forever. A secret that, once uncovered, would reveal that John had infected Jane with a virus that would change both their lives in ways they could never have imagined. What happened next was more than just a personal tragedy. It was a journey of heartbreak, betrayal, and ultimately, a quest for justice. Jane's response to this betrayal was something no one saw coming. Stay with us as we uncover her emotional journey, the powerful decisions she made, and the consequences that followed. This is a story you don't want to miss. If you're fascinated by stories of true crime, betrayal, and the dark twists that life can take, then you've come to the right place. Welcome to True Crime Mysteries, where we delve into the most shocking and emotional cases. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an episode. Stay with us as we uncover the details of this heartbreaking and powerful journey. To truly understand the depth of Jane and John's story, we need to look back at the events that led up to that fateful reunion. John had been in prison for 11 long years. A man with a complicated past, he had been convicted of a crime that shocked their small community. While his time in prison was marked by struggles, Jane never gave up on him. She visited him regularly, sent him letters, and held on to the hope that one day he would return and their life together would begin again. Despite the time and distance, Jane's love for John never wavered. She held on to the belief that people could change, that the man she fell in love with was still inside the man behind bars. And so, when she received that letter telling her he was finally being released, she couldn't wait to see him again. The day he walked out of that prison, it felt like a dream come true. John, on the other hand, was not the same person who had entered prison all those years ago. His time behind bars had changed him, physically, emotionally, and mentally. He came out hardened by the years he had spent away from the world. He was a man who had lived through unspeakable things, and that darkness had seeped into his very soul. But Jane didn't see this. She only saw the man she loved, the man she believed would be the same once he returned. What Jane didn't know, what she couldn't have possibly imagined, was that John was carrying something with him. Something far more dangerous than his past, something that would change their lives forever. John's release should have been a fresh start for them both. They moved into a small house, just the two of them. Jane was excited to rebuild their life, to make up for lost time. But as the days went on, Jane began to notice changes in John, mood swings, an unusual distance between them, and a coldness that wasn't there before. He seemed different, more withdrawn, and Jane couldn't help but wonder what was really going on in his mind. Then came the moment that would unravel everything. It was an evening like any other. Jane and John were having dinner, talking about the future, when John casually mentioned that he had been diagnosed with something while in prison. Jane, concerned, asked him what it was. He hesitated before revealing the truth. John had been infected with HIV while in prison. A disease he had contracted during his time behind bars, a disease that he never told Jane about. And in his silence, he had unknowingly infected her as well. The man she had waited for, the man she trusted with her life, had betrayed her in the most unimaginable way. After John's revelation, Jane was left in shock. She sat there, trying to process what she had just heard. The words seemed to echo in her mind, growing louder and more incomprehensible with each passing second. She could feel the weight of his confession pressing down on her, suffocating her in a way she had never experienced before. How could this happen? How could the man she loved, the man she had been waiting for all these years, betray her in such a way? The shock turned into anger, confusion, and fear. Jane had trusted John with everything, her heart, her life, and now her health was at risk because of his silence. And as the days passed, the reality of his words settled in like a stone in her chest. The first few days after John's confession were filled with tension. Jane didn't know how to look at him anymore. Every time she saw him, her mind raced with thoughts of betrayal, deceit, and the irreversible consequences of his actions. But despite the emotional turmoil, Jane stayed quiet. She didn't know what to say, how to react, or even what to do next. As Jane's internal struggle grew, so did the fear of the unknown. She didn't know if she had contracted the virus, how long it would take for her to find out, or how her life would change forever. She felt trapped in a nightmare, one that she couldn't wake up from. The man she had once dreamed of building a future with had shattered that dream, and now she was left with a broken heart and a fear she couldn't shake. Then came the moment when Jane had to make a decision. She couldn't stay silent forever. She needed answers, she needed closure, and she needed to know what steps to take to protect herself. So, Jane made the difficult choice to go to the doctor. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew she had to face it head-on. The test results came back. Jane had HIV. The devastating truth was now inescapable. The virus was inside her, changing her body, altering her life in ways she could never have imagined. The emotional toll was immeasurable. But Jane's journey wasn't over. This was only the beginning of her battle, not just against the virus, but against the betrayal she had experienced. Jane could have easily walked away from John, could have ended their relationship and blamed him for everything. But that wasn't what she did. Instead, she chose a different path. A path that no one saw coming. In her heart, Jane still loved John. She still wanted to believe in the man she had waited for. But she knew she had to confront the reality of their situation, and make a choice that would ultimately shape her future. The decisions Jane made next would not only change her life, but also redefine her relationship with John in ways neither of them could have predicted. What would she do? How would she move forward from here? The truth of Jane's response was something that would shock everyone who thought they knew this story. Jane stood at a crossroads, her mind torn between two worlds. On one hand, she was devastated, betrayed, and filled with a rage she couldn't quite put into words. But on the other hand, there was a part of her that still clung to the love she once had for John. She didn't want to believe that the man she had waited for, the man she had loved so deeply, could have done something so cruel. She wanted to forgive him, to move forward, and to find a way to rebuild their lives together. It was in these quiet moments of uncertainty that Jane found herself grappling with an agonizing decision. Should she leave John and try to rebuild her life alone, or should she stay and try to make things work, despite the devastation he had caused? Could love survive such a betrayal? Days turned into weeks, and Jane continued to wrestle with her emotions. She avoided John, keeping her distance as she processed the pain. But John, for his part, seemed to be drowning in guilt. He couldn't look her in the eye. He couldn't bear to face the damage he had caused. His own remorse was eating him alive, and he knew that the weight of his actions might be too much for their relationship to survive. Finally, one night, after weeks of silence between them, Jane and John sat down together. The room was thick with tension. John, his face gaunt with regret, spoke first. "I know I've hurt you in ways I can never take back, Jane. But I need you to understand. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I was lost in that place, and I didn't think about the consequences of my actions. I never wanted to hurt you. Please, I need you to believe that." Jane listened in silence, her heart breaking with every word. But she also heard the desperation in his voice. The man sitting across from her was not the same person who had left all those years ago. He had changed, not just physically, but emotionally. His guilt was consuming him, and for a moment, Jane felt the weight of his sorrow. But even as John spoke, Jane couldn't shake the overwhelming sense of betrayal. She couldn't forget the moment she learned the truth, couldn't erase the fear and pain that had followed. The love she had for him was still there, but it was tainted by the knowledge that the man she trusted had knowingly put her life in danger. In that moment, Jane realized that she couldn't let the past define her future. She had to take control of her own life. She needed to protect herself, physically and emotionally. And so, after hours of painful conversation, Jane made a decision. I don't know what the future holds, John. But I can't keep living in this shadow of fear and betrayal. I'm not saying I'm leaving you, but I need time. Time to heal. Time to think. I need to figure out who I am now, and what my life looks like moving forward. I need to take care of myself, and that means stepping away for a while. Jane's words were like a dagger to John's heart. He understood, but the pain was unbearable. Still, he knew she was right. He had given her no choice. In that moment, Jane made the brave decision to put herself first, to focus on her health and her emotional well-being, and to take the space she needed to decide whether their relationship could ever survive. It wasn't an easy decision, and it wasn't one made out of anger. Jane still loved John. But she knew she had to heal, to find a way to move forward. And as time went on, she realized that healing wasn't just about overcoming the betrayal, it was about rebuilding trust, and learning to trust herself again. Time passed, and Jane slowly began to rebuild her life. The days were long and filled with doubt, but they also gave her the space she desperately needed. She focused on her health, both physical and emotional, seeking support from friends and professionals. She spent countless hours in therapy, processing the pain of the betrayal, and coming to terms with the life-altering diagnosis she now faced. Through it all, Jane discovered something unexpected, her strength. She found resilience in the darkest corners of her heart, a strength she didn't know she had. The woman who once felt helpless and lost now stood tall, taking control of her own future. She learned to prioritize herself, to protect her own peace, and to find the courage to keep moving forward. But even as Jane took these steps toward healing, there was still a question that lingered in her mind. Could she ever forgive John? Could she ever trust him again? Was their love worth fighting for, or was it too broken to ever be repaired? As Jane's healing journey continued, she and John remained in contact, though their relationship had drastically changed. John had taken responsibility for his actions, attending counseling, and making every effort to prove his remorse. But despite his efforts, Jane couldn't help but wonder if their love had been irreparably damaged. There were moments when she missed him terribly. The man she had loved for so long was still there in some ways, but the man who had betrayed her was also a part of him now. Could the man who had hurt her so deeply truly change? Or was the man she had once known lost forever? Jane's thoughts were torn between hope and doubt. She wanted to believe that people could change, that love could overcome even the most painful betrayals. But she also knew that healing didn't mean forgetting. It meant accepting the reality of what had happened, and making the difficult choice to either move forward with the person who had caused the pain, or to move on without them. After months of reflection, Jane made a decision. She realized that while she might never fully erase the scars of betrayal, she had the power to choose her path. And that path didn't have to be defined by her past. It was up to her whether she would let the betrayal define her, or if she would allow herself to heal and find happiness again, whether with John or without him. Jane chose to forgive, not for John's sake, but for her own. She knew that holding on to anger and resentment would only keep her trapped in the past. And so, with time, she began to let go. She still didn't know what the future held for her and John, but she knew that she was no longer the woman she had been before. Her journey toward healing was far from over, but it had begun. And that, in itself, was a victory. Jane learned that healing wasn't a straight line, it was messy, complicated, and sometimes painful. But it was also powerful. It was the act of reclaiming her life, of deciding who she would be, and what she would stand for, no matter what had happened in the past. And though the scars of betrayal would never fully fade, Jane knew that she had emerged stronger. The woman she had once been had been shattered, but from the pieces, she had rebuilt herself, stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever to take control of her own destiny. As the months passed, Jane and John found themselves in a new phase of their relationship. They didn't pick up where they left off. That was impossible. Instead, they began to rebuild their connection slowly, cautiously, one step at a time. John's guilt never fully went away. He knew that the damage he had caused was irreversible, but he also knew that he had to live with it, every single day. He couldn't undo what he had done, but he could work to be a better man for Jane, for himself, and for the life they had once dreamed of. But even as they tried to rebuild, the shadow of the past lingered. Jane couldn't forget the betrayal, and John couldn't erase the fear that one day, she might leave him for good. They both knew that trust was something that would take time to rebuild, and that forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. Would they ever truly be able to move on from the betrayal? Could love really survive after such a devastating revelation? Only time would tell. Despite everything, Jane and John found a way to keep going. The love they had once shared was different now, but it was still there. And in some ways, it was even stronger. They had both changed, for better or worse, but they had learned that love wasn't just about perfection, it was about resilience, forgiveness, and the ability to grow together, even after the darkest of times. As for Jane, she learned to live with the complexities of her emotions. She didn't have all the answers, and she didn't need them. What mattered was that she had taken control of her own life, and had faced the darkest chapter of her story with courage. And in the end, that was the most important thing of all. John and Jane's story wasn't just about betrayal and heartbreak, it was about the power of choice. The choice to forgive, to heal, and to move forward, no matter how difficult the road may seem. Jane's journey is a reminder that no one is immune to betrayal, and no one is exempt from the pain of heartbreak. But it is also a reminder that healing is possible. That even in the darkest moments, there is a path forward. And that, no matter what life throws at us, we have the power to choose how we respond. Thank you for watching this heartbreaking story of love, betrayal, and healing. If you want to hear more true crime mysteries and real-life stories, don't forget to subscribe to True Crime Mysteries and hit the notification bell to stay updated with our latest videos. Until next time, stay safe, stay strong, and remember, the truth always finds its way to the surface, no matter how deep it's buried.